Welcome back to Unfiltered Unspoken Podcast, where we told you we're going to continue to share life experiences. We're having a bad storm right now, so Sid hopefully will be able to join shortly. If not, it will just be me and Michelle, but we hope the power comes on. We're having issues in the Northern Virginia area. So, Michelle, we want to welcome you to Unfiltered Unspoken Podcast. Thank you for being. I apologize. It's the honor for you to come and share your testimony and how your disability doesn't define you. If you could come up and tell the audience a little bit about yourself, and then we're gonna get into it.
Sure. Thank you so much. Well, my name is Michelle Steiner. I live in Pennsylvania with my husband, Ron, and our two cats, Jack and Sparrow. I am a paraeducator or a teacher's aide. I work in a school with students who have disabilities and some who don't. And I also have a blog called Michelle's Mission, where I write about my life with a learning disability and feature my photography. And I have a learning disability as well.
All right, perfect. Well, let's get into it. We typically start from the childhood and then we work our way on up. If you could tell us a little bit about your childhood, and I know we're solely going to stick on disability. So if you could tell us a little bit about your childhood, how the disability came into place.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I was diagnosed with having a learning disability whenever I was in kindergarten. So very early on, I had the reality that I learned differently and I thought differently than maybe a lot of other people did. I can remember when I was in the class, I was really struggling in learning to tie my shoes. I was having difficulty with anything math related. I had trouble with writing my name. Dot-to-dot pages were particularly difficult for me. I thought, oh, I'm doing them right. And then I got them back and they weren't. And my teacher noticed all these things. And I was really lucky that she did whenever I was very young. I was also my parents' first child, so they didn't have a lot to base on typical development. So my teacher recommended that I get tested for having a learning disability. And sure enough, I have one. And during that time, they didn't give a specific name such as dyscalculia. They didn't also know that I had a limited hand dexterity in both of my hands. But we knew I was not going to be a math genius by the time that I was 5 or 6. That was already determined. And I had to repeat kindergarten the following year. And I had to go to a different school in our district. It was still a public school. And those school years were really hard for me. Academically and socially. I really struggled in the classroom. I was really frustrated. I just wanted to learn like everybody else did. I wanted to make my parents proud of me. And I just couldn't seem to learn very well. And I had to also, with repeating the grade, I also had specialty instruction in all areas to begin with. And I was just thinking that life was always going to be really difficult and was going to be my disability that was going to get in the way of a lot of this. I can also remember the social struggle with it as well. I went to a very small conservative school district that was close-knit and kind and caring if you were one of them. And it was obvious from the beginning I wasn't one of them. I couldn't hide the fact that I went to learning support for classes, and even when I was in regular ed classes, I still went to have a test read aloud to me and to just have that support. Everybody knew that's where I went. And I got, everybody could see I could also struggle in the regular ed classroom as well. And I got even picked on in learning support. A lot of my peers in the class, they mostly struggled with reading and writing, where I struggled more with math. And some of them sadly had some trauma backgrounds and behavior problems that were going on. And there was also people that were in my class that, looking back on it, they had autism or other types of disabilities and nobody knew what to do. So they just all placed them in a learning support classroom. And I just remember feeling so hopeless at that time and thinking, I'm not good at anything. Well, luckily the school found out I was good at reading and writing. And they started putting me in a regular ed class for reading. And then my dad found a story that I wrote about a dinosaur when I was in second or third grade. And he thought, he told me this was really good. And that just gave me that encouragement. And reading and writing really became my own little world, especially when I was being bullied.
Okay.
And
I'm gonna jump in real quick and grab you because I want to go back a little bit and then we'll come back up really quick.
Get right ahead.
Yes. Okay. So you mentioned that you found out that you had a learning disability in kindergarten. Can you tell us, because there are a lot of people with learning disabilities and parents don't know how or what to do and the relationship with the school. When you found out you had a learning disability, how did the school adjust to helping you with your learning disability, or did your parents have to more so push the school to help you get the accommodations that you needed?
Well, I finished out my school year without having accommodations my very first year. And then the following school year, I had to repeat kindergarten and another school, and I had specialty instruction. So that was one of the first things that we started. We did specialty instruction classes in all areas: math, reading, writing, in the morning. And they wanted to really drill a lot of those skills into me to do that. I also had speech therapy because my ears were clogged because of allergies and fluid in my ears. I had tubes in them 4 times, so I wasn't hearing sounds properly, how words were. So for the first 5 years I had of school, I had speech therapy. And after that, I didn't need it. I also was placed in regular ed classes, starting with in first grade. And they started with a reading class, a little bit of spelling. I also was in for science and social studies starting in second grade. And I had the supports in those classes with having the test read aloud to me. And I had extra time on my test as well. And they had me sit in the front of the classroom so I could hear the teacher better.
That's a good thing. Was it an IEP that they put you on?
Yes, I had an IEP.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. I know a little something. Both of my kids had IEPs, but I made sure I was involved with the accommodation. So that's why I asked that question.
Yeah, yes. And my parents were involved with that as well. They were one of the people that went to all the meetings and worked with the teachers and made sure that I had a good education.
So you had a really good support system behind you. That's good.
Did.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I wanted to ask, how did it make you feel at such a young age repeating the kindergarten again?
It was really hard for me because I just wanted to go on with school, and I really didn't like going to school because I was really frustrated. And then in some ways, it was also a little bit confusing and even comical. I remember they really didn't know, the school didn't know what to do with me for a full day. We didn't have all day kindergarten. And I remember I would come in the morning and I would be in a first grade classroom for like a home room. And I had a very strict first grade teacher. And then I had to go to learning support in the morning. And then I ate lunch with my first grade peers. And then in the afternoon, I had kindergarten. And I can remember, I don't know what the photographer thought whenever we did school pictures that year. I was in 2 classes, and I know a lot of my peers were confused on why I was in a first grade class and in kindergarten. So I think that was difficult. And one thing that always stuck out after that was I was always really afraid that I was going to have to repeat another grade. So there's a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear that came out of that as well.
And so now you said you had a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear. Did that affect your ability to learn in school?
I really think in some ways it did, because sometimes I would kick myself when I would be so afraid to answer a question in class because I thought I would be wrong. And then I would kick myself whenever a peer would answer it, and that was the answer that I had, because I was so worried that I was going to be the one that maybe didn't answer things correctly. So it really took a lot of time to develop that confidence in myself, that it's okay to not always have the answers, and sometimes you might be right and sometimes you might be wrong, but to take that chance and to know when I really know something, to be able to stand up and to speak. People thought that I was really shy for a lot of years. I can remember in 5th grade, I got an award for being the shyest girl. And it wasn't that I didn't want to talk to people. It's not that I didn't like other people. It's just I was really afraid of how somebody will respond, because I was bullied and picked on and really struggled with learning.
Understood. You mentioned that you had social struggles with
Yes.
folks. Can you talk a little bit about your social struggles?
Sure. When I was young, it was, I don't like you. I don't want to play with you on the playground. You're not my friend. And it got worse as I went throughout school. It just wasn't simply not getting invited to a birthday party or a seat at the lunch table. It was now a lot of people just did not like me. And the bullying really intensified. And also peer groups became really defined at that age. It just seemed like everybody had a group or a friend that they fit in with. And I just didn't have anybody. And I really didn't feel like I fit in anywhere. And one of the things that I did was I had to come to this realization that the people that I went to school with weren't really my people, wasn't really my tribe. And I started to look elsewhere to make friends. And I was really lucky and really blessed. I found a faith-based art group just outside of my school district. And not only did I find other teenagers that shared my interest and accepted me, but I also found more of a deeper relationship with God. I was raised Catholic, and my parents planted a lot of seeds in me with going to church, but I didn't see God as someone to have a relationship with. I didn't see a loving God. And when I started going to that group, that's when I started to see that God really did want to have a relationship with me. And it wasn't this angry God. It was more of having a relationship. And I think that's really was what really started to make a lot of the difference in my life. I also, when I transitioned out of that group, God also blessed me with finding an adult writing group with people just a couple years older than I was. And I can just see so many ways that he worked in that. 20 some years later, we still meet to talk about our writing, and we're in each other's lives. And it's just a really amazing thing. And they were the ones that really encouraged me to write about having a disability. And I just wasn't ready at that point. And I wrote some really bad poetry and some other things I wouldn't want to read today. And I put that on the shelf for so many years, but they were the inspiration for me writing that.
Okay. And I love to talk more, because now I'm an advocate of bullying,
Mm-hmm.
because I was bullied and I was a bully as
Mm-hmm.
well. So I like to talk about that more, to bring awareness. Just if someone is bullying, they can stop, the impact and how it feels if it's a family member or even a child at school. And we know most bullies typically are dealing with a traumatic situation, and typically it comes from home. I wanted to ask, can you talk a little bit more about your book, about you being bullied, and some of the situations that you went through with bullying, like incidents on how a child bullied you, and the impact how it affected you?
A lot of people bullied me they didn't think I was very smart. I got called the R word a lot. I mean, that was really difficult to go into class. I had one girl in particular who basically, she was saying, I don't know why we have to go to school with people like you. And it even got to the point where she was saying that she wanted to kill me. And I can just remember, luckily, it was all just smoke. And I was really upset about that. And I can remember I was dating a guy. He was a few years older than I was. And I was telling him about this. And he said, I think she's just trying to get you going. I think that, and looking back, a lot of that was like a reaction. So I can remember I walked into school, and this is when we had payphones, and she was on the phone, and she told me that she was going to kill me. And I just looked at her and I said, "Oh, that's nice. Have a great day." And her jaw dropped, and she had this incredulous expression on her face. And she still picked on me, but it got easier. And I started to realize a lot of my peers would pick on me because they wanted to see a reaction, not necessarily wanting to harm me physically. And that was really difficult with that. And I can just even remember being, when I was in a learning support room too, I had other students that said that I wasn't very smart and they were the only smart ones in the room. And I'm thinking, well, we're all in this class together. So there's a reason for that. And it really was difficult. And I walked into a lot of situations too, with not knowing how to sometimes react. I was an only child for 13 years. And by the time my brother came along, we were just in different places. So I spent a lot of time with adults, and I had a lot of adult interactions. So I really didn't know how to interact with a lot of kids. I had even some bad experiences in the neighborhood with growing up. I flinch every time an object is in my face. And I've had people, when I was riding my bike, that some of the neighbor kids would put their hands in front of my face and cause me to flinch, and just a lot of that picking on me for that as well.
So can you talk the neighborhood? Bullying is kind of I like to bring awareness in this area. So riding your bike, you had kids putting their hands in your face, causing you to flinch. Did they stop you while you were riding? Did they make you fall off the bike while you were riding?
I really
Go ahead.
I didn't fall off the bike, at least not from that. From other things I did. But there was also just a lot of that picking on me, from just, my hand coordination wasn't that great. People told me I ran too slow. And sometimes I would get into arguments too. I certainly wasn't far from perfect, but I can remember a lot of times the parents just thought, even did some of that as well. So, I mean, it was really a very tough situation to be in.
Did anyone ever physically put their hands on you, bullying you?
Yes, we got into like the fights and things like that, with that, but I mean, yeah.
So kids would just pick on you and then just put their hands on you?
And I'd fight,
Can you talk about a situation, and also how it impacted you, a child just walking up and putting their hands on you?
That was a situation where I had to fight back. And I can remember there was one time that one of the neighborhood kids was picking on me, and I did hit her back, and her mom was like, well, what right did you have to hit her? And I was wanting to ask, well, while that wasn't right that I handled the situation with that, looking back on it, I wanted to ask the mom, well, what right did your child have to make fun of me too? I mean, it was a situation where you had kids and they were picking on each other. So I had that. And there was other people in my neighborhood where we were just fighting a lot of times with each other. And just, it was a lot of difficulty with that.
And how did that make you feel? Did that affect your just part of the socialization with other kids? Did that cause changes within yourself?
I think it made me wonder what was wrong with me. Like, why couldn't I make friends? And sometimes I didn't really want to play with other kids. I was happy to be by myself, especially at home, because I didn't have a lot of siblings or things like that. So, I mean, it really, it made me wonder, well, why can't I get along with these people, and what is wrong with me? And it kind of just brought a lot of situations, even like with riding the bus. If I had another student, another one that was trying to hit me, and that was hard. I mean, those years were really difficult in those elementary school years too.
Where were the teachers and the parents? Like, did anyone ever intervene or protect you, or did your parents get involved?
My parents didn't get very much involved with a lot of it. I think a lot of it, they wanted me to be the one that was able to handle that. And I sometimes had to go up against adults by myself too and defend myself. I mean, not physically, but a lot of times just verbally with what was going on. My parents did some behind the scenes stuff, and they did try in certain situations, but a lot of it was they wanted me to just do a lot of this on my own. And I can also remember whenever I was in school telling certain teachers, and sometimes they would get involved with that. I was always really hesitant, but I can remember telling the school nurse that somebody wanted to hurt me. And she said, well, if it's, if you're going out to the bus, just make sure you get close to the bus driver. And I didn't have a lot of support from a lot of people. Now, when I got older, I told a couple of other teachers, they did get involved, and they did say, don't say stuff like that. And they started to see where I was getting picked on.
That's good. And I think that's a struggle now. It's like, where are the adults at to protect the kids? Like, and in that scenario, in that aspect, like, it's a school. I mean, people should be getting disciplined. I was going to ask, do you felt as though going through the bullying that your parents could have been more supportive and it may have changed things?
I think in some ways, I think that maybe having that support might have made things easier. But my mom and dad, they did the best that they could do. But I think sometimes just maybe having a little more support is something. And my parents and I we do have differing views on that as well.
And while we're here really quick, I just want to ask, and I like to do, because it's me and you now, so I'll just spread this out. Can you give maybe parents from being bullied? Can you give some feedback to parents to help protect their kids through bullying, or how they can be more supportive to their kids that are being bullied in school?
One of the first things I love to tell parents, though, is with their own kids, how not to really create a bully. And that's the first thing, is to look at how they treat other people. If you're somebody that's making comments about other people's appearance or disability, and you're saying unkind things, even if you don't want your kids to say that, or you may not mean it, or you don't want them to repeat that, a lot of times kids learn from their mom and dad. And I think that just watching what you say, especially in front of your children, and to do better than to make unkind statements about other people, goes a long way too, because kids see that and they think that's okay to go and say that to somebody. And then maybe they don't realize that really is hurtful, and that can get them into a lot of problems with somebody else. I also, when I work with students who are being bullied, I also give them maybe some different ways that they can learn how to handle the bully. I know that sometimes it's always really subtle things. I tell them they can report things to the principal, and I really encourage that. I've had students that have had many times somebody keeps picking on them, and usually that's when they gravitate towards me, and I'll say, well, it's up to you if you want to report them. But I'll give them maybe some soft ways that they can handle a bully that don't require a lot of adult interaction, and doesn't require a lot of attention, because sometimes that's what they're seeking. So maybe I'll tell them, if they're getting picked on at lunch, maybe you can try changing your lunch table around and seeing if that helps. And then if they ask you, well, why are you not sitting with me? You can just say, oh, I'm just trying out some different tables. And sometimes when I had a student that was being picked on in their class, and she would report it, nothing would happen. I had a student that would come over and she'd sit with me, and then we would hang out together, and she would tell me about things that were going on, and I did what I could do to help. Sometimes we would go and make crafts outside of the classroom. Sometimes just sitting there hanging out. Sometimes the kids didn't really want to pick on her as much, or if they tried to, I can remember, I think I dropped something and they blamed it on her. And I said, well, actually that was me. And then they look at me like, oh, you're admitting you dropped something. I'm like, yeah, I mean, but I think it was just showing little ways that kids can handle maybe having a bully that doesn't bring a lot of attention to themselves.
Wonderful, wonderful advice. Wonderful advice. Now, with the kids, what being a teacher, what can you tell other teachers or administrative staff to help support kids that are being bullied and not turning a left eye to it?
I think the first thing is to really believe a student when they come in there, and that this is happening. A lot of times people don't want to believe kids that this is happening. Sometimes they might get somebody, oh, that kid would never pick on anybody. And it's true. A lot of times somebody is doing that you at least expect. And I think it's just listening to that and taking a lot of that seriously. I think that's a big thing. I think it's also educating people too on how to be nice to each other, how maybe to handle people that might be different. And I also think that having social media complicates things as well. A lot of times we'll have situations where outside of school, somebody will post something on Snapchat or Facebook or Instagram. And we have people that are coming in there and they're taking a lot of these situations in the classroom in there. And then we have to deal with some of those things that comes up. So I think it's educating people just to be careful of what they say to another person, because that really has impact. Sometimes people don't think, well, if I say it online, it's not saying it to their face, but somebody reads that and it stays there, and that can cause a lot of situations. So I think it's educating families and of not putting things up there, and also what to do when you do encounter maybe something on social media that is a bully situation or is a threat. A lot of times we might have parents that they might make the situation worse by sharing it rather than reporting it to whoever is on the platform that they should be reporting it to, whether it's also taking it into the school and saying this is a situation that's going on, or taking it to the police or whoever they need to report it to. A lot of times people will end up sharing it, and what that does is that just makes the situation worse for everybody.
I appreciate your insight, and please listen, administrative and parents. Michelle just shared some wonderful advice, and we need to stop the bullying, because we are losing our babies behind bullying, and some of them, they just cannot take the weight of bullying. I'm going to go back just a little bit because you chatted about your ear and having tubes in your ear. And I know people struggle with the tubes or issues with the ears. Did you have ear infections that caused you to have tubes in your ear?
Yes, I had ear infections and allergies, and I had to get my tonsils out and my adenoids, and I just had a lot of issues with allergies, and the fluid would build up in my ears, and it could be really hard for me to be able to hear, and I got sick a lot.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about the struggles through the allergies and suffering with ear infections, just in case, because someone's child may be struggling with the same issues and they may not know what to do, and you sharing your life experience may help them.
Sure. When I was really young, I would constantly have colds. I would be sick with strep throat. I would be sick with a lot of different things. And during that time, they just prescribed antibiotics for things that weren't even infections. Weren't bacterial. So my immune system, I started to really experience, I was sick all the time as an adult. And it wasn't until, I even had reactions to antibiotics. And it wasn't until they did allergy testing where they found out that I'm allergic to animals, and I'm allergic to dust and molds. And then they found out I was allergic to even things like cement. So for a number of years, I got allergy shots, and it really helped to improve with that. And also some other lifestyle things with making sure that I keep the house dusted, and just making sure we don't have mold in the house. All those things help out as well.
Would you mind sharing some of the side effects, like the symptoms, the triggers to the allergies and the mold, or what may have caused the...
Right. If I worked at a job site where they had mold in the basement, and that could make me be coughing or really congested. Sometimes if I'm around I have 2 cats. They, knock on wood, they don't make me that sick. But sometimes if I'm around a lot of animals, over time they can make me sick. And sometimes if I'm just like around a couple dogs all at once, sometimes my eyes can water. I can be sneezing. I really, it can be hard if I sniff grass, like right after somebody mows it, and even things that you can't control. Like if it rains really bad, there's that, it's released into the air right afterwards. And that can also cause me to sneeze. So those are some things that were really affecting me.
And did that would cause the ear infections?
Right, bronchitis a lot. Those would cause ear infections because the fluid would just stay in the ear.
Okay. And what so the severity, how bad were your ear infections, the severity of them?
They hurt a lot, and I had fevers, and I had to get antibiotics with them because they would get infected. And I had so many that I had 4 separate surgeries when I was young to be able to relieve the pressure in the ear, so I wasn't going to get sick. And then I would be fine when the tubes were in, and then they'd fall out, and I'd be sick all over again.
So the tubes would fall out?
Yeah.
Were they supposed to fall out?
Yes, they were supposed to fall. They fall out after a certain time naturally. Now, as an adult, I had an in-office procedure where they just, my ears were clogged, similar to that. And it was pretty much what they do when they put the tubes in, except, they drain the ear out. And yeah, just so you could sit still. When you're an adult, you can sit still during them, but when you're a kid, you can't.
Okay. Do they have permanent tubes or all of
No.
No,
they just drained the ear out, and it worked.
Was that a painful surgery?
It wasn't that bad. It was a little bit uncomfortable, but other than that, it wasn't too bad.
Okay. I wanted to ask, so going into your, we chatted a little bit.
Yeah.
You mentioned that people teased you a lot when it came to your education. They called you names, and
yes,
we chatted about that. They said you wouldn't even make it to college.
yes.
Can you tell, did that happen from a child, or did that happen as an adult? And was it the same kids that were bullying you?
That happened whenever I was a teenager. And it wasn't the kids, it was the adults. I had a learning support teacher who told me, I think it was 10th grade, that I most likely could not handle college because of my math. And she suggested a trade school. But nothing at that trade school really interested me. I can just remember just thinking, okay, nothing, it just didn't really feel like that was a good fit. So I decided I was going to go to college. And I had a psychiatrist who told me that I would most likely not go beyond community college. And as an adult, I got stigma from both staff and students at community college. I was told that disability accommodations were cheating, And I can remember asking a professor for a use on a calculator. And she said that, yeah, that's, we use our brains in this class. I had a professor, an advisor, who told me that I was going to have limited job choices because of my math. And hearing that was just really hard. I didn't want to get the extra help or the accommodations because of that, and my grades suffered. But it wasn't until that I had a professor who suggested using those extra test time that I was able to pass her class, and I was able to get my associate's degree in early childhood education. But I still, as an adult, I had people that would tell me, well, I don't know what kind of job you're going to want, or if you're going to be able to find someone that's going to want you with a disability, with a relationship. And I even had people that rejected me because of that. I had a guy that I was breaking up with me that said, I think you could drive with having your disability, but you don't want to, and I'm tired of taking you places. So there was a lot of voices that were telling me that of all the things that I couldn't do.
Wow. So you pretty much did it make you, not pretty much, did it make you feel like that you couldn't do it?
Yes, I felt like I couldn't do it. I felt like just because somebody said I couldn't do it, I must be true. And I really felt discouraged growing up. I really felt fearful that, well, what if this doesn't work out that way? And that was really, I was just very discouraged.
And mainly adults.
Mm-hmm.
So what did you ever, did it ever mentally affect you? Like, I guess it's emotional abuse, right?
A lot of it was. I mean, there is that emotional side to it. So, I mean, it did affect me emotionally. And it took me a while to realize that some of the stuff that people said to me wasn't very nice. And it was okay to not feel happy about that. And it was all right to explore a lot of those feelings and to think about that. And what really helped me a lot was writing. I think that when I started writing about it and getting real, that's when I could just release a lot of forgiveness to people that might have hurt me. I remember there was somebody that everybody just said, oh, just get over it. You just need to let it go with her. And I couldn't forgive that person. But when I finally put this character in a story of mine, I was able to forgive that person. And there was just such power in that. And I was so happy I was, because that person did pass. And our relationship improved. And when she passed, I could go to the funeral and I didn't feel guilt or regrets about anything.
Good. So that's good. That's a strength to say, I'm going to let it go. So what gave you the courage and the motivation to say, despite what you say, I'm going to get this degree?
I can remember I was living on my own for a while, and I was loving my independence, and I was working some temp jobs. And it was nice because I wasn't able to drive because of my disability, so I could walk to where I needed to go. But I always wanted more for myself. And be careful what you wish for, because sometimes that happens. You might get more than you expect. I had to move back in with my parents for financial reasons, and my job was downsizing, and I thought, I'm going to give university a try. I just told myself I have to try it. I didn't know how it was going to work, but I wanted to try it. So I found the program that had the least amount of math and science possible. It had disability accommodations, and I went for it. And this time I made sure that I advocated for myself. And I would introduce myself to professors saying, hi, my name's Michelle. I have a learning disability, and these are the things I'm going to need to do. And I can just remember there was always going to be people that thought that disability accommodations were cheating. A lot of times people may not have understood it, but I could silence those voices. And when I finally silenced those voices and I focused on what I needed to do, things really started to improve. My grades improved dramatically. Also, because I wasn't working during that time, I had that chance to focus on school. And I also used the accommodations, and I had a much easier time. I made dean's list for a semester. And when I finally graduated with that bachelor's degree, that's what gave me that confidence to say, I can do this. And it gave me such a boost because my disability didn't go away, but I was still able to be successful despite that. And I really wanted to go out and to make that difference for other people that have them as well.
I love it. Yes, yes. So you silenced the professors, you silenced everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Did it the teachers that may felt like it was cheating or the accommodation, did they change and become more supportive towards you?
Yes, I found the perfect program. I really found professors that were learning support teachers and helped other students with disabilities before they were professors in my department. So they were really encouraged when I came there, and they went out of their way to help me and to make sure that I was supported. I still had the same standards as everybody else did, but they really went out of their way to be of assistance. And I also had other professors that really, once they understood the situation, they went out of their way to help me out as well. And that was the thing that I really just felt like I was in the right place. I was in a program that I wasn't being really, it wasn't something that was overwhelming, but it still gave that challenge. And I had the right fit for me.
Love it. So from going and fighting for yourself and getting your degree, I want to ask, from personal life experiences, what advice would you give someone with a disability that is going through the same thing as you, where people tell them you can't do this, you can't do that, and you did it? So what advice would you give someone that is struggling with being not motivated, people trying to bring them down? What advice would you give them?
The first thing I would tell people is to know what you want and to be able to find a way to do it. It may not look how you started, it may not look like the original dream, but think about what you want to do and what you want to put into that, and then find a way to do it. And also, my dad gave me some really great advice whenever I was growing up. He said, success doesn't always come in the package that you expect, but sometimes it comes in something even better. And I've learned that throughout my life, that maybe things didn't always work out the way that I wanted them to, but just it works out a lot better than I expected.
Awesome. And I'm sorry. You also mentioned, I was listening to you, you mentioned that you said you could not drive because of your disability.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I've heard two things. One of your boyfriends breaking up mentioned that you can't drive
Yes.
without your disability, and then you needed to get around, but you had to take public transportation because of your disability. Can you talk about how the disability impacted you from driving?
Sure, I'd be happy to. My learning disability, I have visual perception issues, and it's not in my eyes, it's in my brain. So it's how my brain might perceive objects, my reaction time, and just the general eye-hand coordination. I've never been that great at that. And we knew growing up, especially gym class, with flinching every time an object would come in my field of vision, that might be an obstacle. And we got a driver's license evaluation. Another thing, my parents had me wait a year before we even made a decision with that. And one of the key things was they did some activities around the house that would help me out if I was going to drive. One of the things they did was they had me, we lived in the country, and they thought, oh, can you go mow the field? And instead of making beautiful straight lines, I made circles. So I affectionately say, I know where crop circles now come from. And they also wanted me to drive up our family car up the long driveway we have. And thank God my mom was in the car with me, or else we would have wrecked into the family garage. So my mom and dad knew this just was not a case of somebody just is a little uncoordinated or isn't going to be an athlete. They knew that there was something else going on and they wanted to get it checked out. And I passed all the things with the driver's license eval, and everything was good until we got to visual perception part. And they said, because of your visual perception, we don't recommend that you get your license. And that was like 100 pounds word lifted off of me, because I was afraid if I would get behind the wheel, I would not only hurt myself, but I had a possibility of hurting somebody else.
And that's the first time I've ever heard of visual perception and the impact. So that's what I love about this, is bringing awareness, and we get to learn something new that we didn't know about. So did not driving cause issues with you getting around or doing things that you wanted to do, or people felt a weight on them? Do you feel like you how do I want to say this, inconvenienced other people?
Well, one of the things, my peers didn't quite understand it. The ones I went to school with, they didn't get it. They would say, well, are you going to get your license yet, or why aren't you driving? So that was one of those things that I missed out on a lot. But my friend, I was really lucky when I found my group of friends who were writers in my group. They just would pick me up, and it wasn't a big deal. I mean, maybe in the beginning, some of them didn't quite understand it, but then they understood as time went on that was a part of it as well. And that was, so I really didn't miss out on that. Sometimes people would make comments, other people like, why aren't you driving? Or you should be ashamed of yourself. They didn't quite understand that. Or they would say, well, why don't you just get glasses? And glasses really aren't going to help very much with having this, because it's in my brain. So I had that. Sometimes I had to turn down jobs because first of all, I couldn't get to a place, and I knew I wasn't going to go to a job that I didn't have transportation to get to. And other places would put that they wanted you to have a driver's license, even if the job didn't require driving. And I can just remember I went to an interview at a center, and the woman asked me, well, you said you don't drive. What are we supposed to do if you take the bus and the bus is late? How are we supposed to handle that? And she further went on that I figured this was not going to be a disability friendly place, because she saw that I worked with children that had disabilities. And she said, oh, you work with kids that have disabilities. I said, yeah. She goes, do you enjoy that? I said, yes. And she goes, oh, we don't have anyone in our program that has a disability. So a lot of times that can be a factor with driving. And I also live in a very small town where we have very limited transportation to get to places. And not that there's a whole lot around anyways, but the bus does not go to every single place. So a lot of times what I'll end up doing is I'm very blessed to have rides from my husband and coworkers and family. But when I don't have a ride, I make sure that's one of how it influenced living in a central location where I could walk places. And on my walks, I get the chance to take pictures of flowers. And I get to notice people say I bring out the details in a flower that they would miss. And I get to notice details that other people would miss in life.
So your disability gave you a strength, and that's details and the vision to see, even though you have visions, and with the driving piece of it, your vision to objects and beautiful things is totally different. And God gives us that strength sometimes. So definitely. What advice would you give someone that may not know that they have this rare, what do you call it? I don't want to say wrong. Would you call the vision issue a disease, or
it's part of the learning disability. There is different ones that yeah, exactly.
Okay. Okay. So with a parent that's struggling, some people may not even know or even aware. What advice would you give someone that may not know that is struggling to figure out with their child? What advice would you give them to maybe go take their kid to get additional tests for safety
Mhm.
measures and how they can cope with having vision issues, a part of a learning disability.
Well, one of the things I would recommend is they reach out to their child's teacher and ask them, is my child struggling in the classroom? Or how are they doing in the room? And if they have some concerns, to bring that up with them. And sometimes they can bring up things. You can also contact your child's pediatrician. I know my parents, even when I was young, uh, they knew that it was visual perception issues from one time I was really little. So my dad had a balance beam, and then we even put the eye doctor recommended putting a baseball from this hanging from the ceiling and just have me hit like with a wiffle ball, just to try to do that too. It didn't help me with being able to drive, but it helped with maybe some other things. We tried some of those things, and I think there's also a lot of other services. That are in schools that maybe they didn't have whenever I was younger, like occupational therapy. I know that you can do that with visual perception. I also have limited hand dexterity in both of my hands. We didn't find out that until I was an adult that I had that. And sometimes it's always learning something new when you go for eval. Sometimes you learn that you didn't have something, or then everything makes a lot of sense. And there's occupational therapists that can work with hands, with people in schools, and work with eyes. There's a lot of resources that they didn't have when I was a kid that are additional.
Okay, so now you just threw something else in new. So I'm gonna ask what it is.
Yes.
Can you tell people? You said hand dex.
Hand dexterity.
Okay, can you tell people what hand dex therapy is? The issues with it. I've never
Sure.
heard of that either.
That's okay. Hand dexterity is how your hands work and how they move. So that might be buttoning, unbuttoning things, opening up doors, using keys with your fine motor skills. And that was always a struggle for me. Even in school, I had really bad handwriting, and I was shamed for that a lot of years. And typing is one of the things that help with that. But it never made any sense. People would say I was clumsy. Things would fall out of my hands. I couldn't open up jars. I couldn't use twist ties or baggies that had where you had to be able to take the little ends that didn't have a zipper and enclose them. And I just always wondered what was wrong with me. And I was at an evaluation. I needed extended test time. I was thinking about going to grad school. And they tested me for having hand dexterity issues. And I'll never forget the test. I was blindfolded and I had to put shapes in a shape sorter. And it's an 8-hour evaluation for everything with learning disabilities. And I ordered lunch, and the delivery driver came in while I was doing this, and I had to sign my name blindfolded. And I just wondered what that delivery driver thought of me sitting there with my being blindfolded and putting shapes in a shape sorter. And then they realized I had a little bit of sensory issues along with that too, because they would like touch my hands and I couldn't tell what hand was being touched. And that was one of the things that came up on an eval with my hands. And when I got the results back, and my hands have less than 1%, they're like in the negatives in both of them. And I think my right hand, which is my dominant hand, is stronger. So it has a little more than my left, but that's compared to people that have brain damage.
So so you said it's compared to people that have brain damage?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Did they say that you may have brain damage?
They didn't say that I have brain damage, but they claimed that when they were doing this, that I'm on pretty much with how my hands work with somebody who does. And
Wow.
that was the first time that everything just made sense. That's why I couldn't unlock doors. That's why I really struggle with a lot of things. Handwriting. And that was my first article that I got published. After I got married, we moved into our house, and I could not lock our front door. And I sat down at the computer, and I was so frustrated that I wrote an article for the Mighty. What's a seemingly easy task for other people, but it's really hard with your disability. And it got published.
Oh, wow. I want to ask please don't take this any offense when I
No,
say this.
no.
I just want to ask, do they compare this to any signs of maybe autism? Or would it
Now
be?
that's another interesting thing because there is nonverbal learning disability and there's autism, but nonverbal learning disability is not on the DSM yet. And they did a really interesting study where they did, um, I'm trying to think, they did an autopsy on the brain of somebody that had autism, and then they compared it with somebody that had nonverbal learning disability, and it was totally different. That person might have been diagnosed with autism, but they never told me I had autism. They said there's a possibility of nonverbal, even though it's not listed yet. And there is a push to put that on the next time they do the DSM to put that on there because it's very similar, but there's some differences with it too.
So what do you think? You can't self-diagnose. I just want to ask, what do you think?
No, that's fine. I think that I don't think I have autism. I think I do have a nonverbal learning disability
Okay.
that's on that side of it.
Okay.
But I mean, it could be autism too. I'm not 100% sure at this point. What's another diagnosis? I kind of laugh about that, But yeah, I really think it's a nonverbal learning disability that goes along with that.
Well, you're doing amazing.
Thank
You're
you.
beating the odds, so that is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And look, we've talked. We're almost at time. We're almost at time. So I want to
Yes.
ask really quick. I want to finish off with two things. What made you get into? And I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but I want to hear it from you because it's not me. What made you get into working with kids with disabilities? And was that a challenge for you to work with kids with disability because of your diagnosis?
The reason I wanted to get in working with people with disabilities is to make a difference and to really help them because a lot of times I hear a recording of what it was like myself at that age. I hate my learning disability. I hate my IEP. I wish I didn't have it. And I get that chance to be that voice that says it's okay to have a disability. And having an IEP is not a bad thing. And I show my kids how to advocate too, when the ones I work with in the school, because so many of them come to me afraid and they don't know how to advocate. And I get to show them that. And my students one day will leave me and they'll graduate. And I hope and pray that they achieve every single dream and hope that they want. But for so many of them, their disability is going to remain. And it's just so important that they know how to manage it and how to advocate and speak up for themselves. And sometimes there can be challenges. I am very vocal that I can help them with anything except for math. And I speak up about that. And sometimes they may understand, other times they don't. But I think that that's an important part of showing students humility, that sometimes adults have things that they struggle with too. We're not all good at everything, and some things are hard, but there's also things I can do as well. I'm sorry, I can't hear
I'm
you.
sorry.
That's
I
okay.
forgot to take my thing off mute. Um, you look so passionate about what you do. So that's a beautiful thing, taking your life traumas that affected you in life and turning them into a passion. So that is a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Oh,
I want to ask for a time with we have shameless plug, but I want to ask before we get to shameless plug, can you give the audience advice based off of your life experience and fighting the everyday struggles of overcoming a learning disability? Can you give them advice on how to keep going from your personal life experiences?
one of the things I would tell them is not to give up because things do get better, and to just move forward and not always to listen to everything that somebody tells you. If somebody tells you that you can't do it, you may not be able to do it in the traditional way, but to keep on finding different ways to do things and not letting it hold you back from achieving your dreams.
I love it. And now it's time for shameless plug. I don't say it like Sid, but now it's time for shameless plug. This is the part where we ask if you can talk about any upcoming events, websites, books, anything that you would like to share. You have the floor.
You can find me at my blog, www.michellesmission.com. I have my writing on there. I have some of the books that I was published in some anthologies, and I also have the photography for my walks.
Right, beautiful. Michelle, we want to thank you for tuning into Unfiltered Unspoken Podcast, and we're going to continue to share life experiences to help someone potentially start their journey to healing, and just to let everyone know that there is hope that we can heal through our life traumas.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Make sure you tune in each and every Monday at 8 p.m. Please come like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube, Unfiltered Unspoken Podcast. Subscribe to our Instagram, Unfiltered Unspoken Podcast. And we just created our TikTok, Unfiltered Unspoken Podcast. We will be moving all of our content from The Good Fight to Unfiltered Unspoken Podcast, so we can continue to give an amazing experiences so that people can start there. If you're on a healing journey, we have a testimony that will help you navigate through it. So y'all have a blessed one. Peace.